Hello, all. My name is Dr. Cheryl Burdette, and I am the Education Director for Precision Point Diagnostics. And I wanted to share with you our wellness panels that are designed for either male or female. As we're kicking off this year of patient care, it's oftentimes we're looking for something that will capture the multitude of processes that could be contributing to a pathology, but we're trying to package it in a way that's effective for the patient. So let's run through the value that you receive with the wellness panel from Precision Point Diagnostics. First of all, a marker I'm very fond of, oxidized LDL. And what we know about oxidized LDL is it's 17 times more predictive for cardiovascular disease than cholesterol itself. However, what it also tells us is that the thing that is most damaging to the endothelium is either present or not. And if we have more oxidized lipids, then it points to a need for an increase in terms of increasing antioxidants as part of our strategy for patient care. And then also in the test, you see that there is a chem screen and a CBC. And so of course that we can glean all kinds of information from a chem screen and a CBC. We can check in, we can see what does kidney function look like. If we're seeing some lower level kidney dysfunction, an excellent opportunity to intervene with high dose omega-3 fatty acids that can lead to improvement. Checking out our electrolytes, making sure someone is in balance. But if these are low, it can also tell us about possible adrenal function. One I've got my eye on recently, albumin. So we know that albumin carries things throughout the body. It can function as an antioxidant. So I like to look at a functional range. And when I see this one less than 4, it lets me know that I need to, yes, increase protein, but other considerations are that albumin can begin to leak out of the vessel into the tissue space. And this is a sign of damaged microcirculatory function. Right now, it is imperative that we know that our microcirculatory bed works like it should. This is a target of failure in chronic conditions like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, but we also know that COVID can be largely defined as a microcirculatory condition. So an eyeball, a check on things that can make sure microcirculation is working like it should are useful. If albumin drifts below a 4, it is leaking out of the vessel, and we want to think about a compromised microcirculatory system. Also, of course, your standard enzymes, if we see alk phos elevated, even high normal, don't forget that it can also come from, of course, the liver and the bone, but also the gut. A high normal alk phos can often be associated with LPS that comes from the gut. Now, if we see that elevated, this is a bacterial endotoxin, now we know we might want to consider something like an intestinal barrier assessment. GGT, this is an excellent marker. It will go up when there is more liver damage. However, it will also increase when the body is attempting to make more glutathione. So it can be an excellent marker letting us know oxidative stress going on in the body, damage to the liver, of course, over consumption of alcohol, but other things that will be creating oxidative stress too. Imperative right now that we are taking a look at vitamin D in our patients, because if vitamin D is not where it should be, then of course these are the patients that are more at risk for so many things. And right now in our current condition, an increased risk of not only of COVID, and also of having less efficacy in response to vaccines. So we want to see vitamin D up for so many reasons. After that, a complete thyroid count. And so always nice to get a spot check on, and some little insights here. When we see an increase in TPO antibodies, this can tell us that we need more iodine, or we need more antioxidants. When we see an increase in thyroglobulin antibodies, this will tell us that we need more selenium. Looking at our white count, our red count, remember that if you see low normal white count, to think about levels of toxicity in the body. That same trend happens if you see low normal or low platelets, these can be indications of toxicity as well as other pathology, things that we need to rule out. So after our chem screen and our CBC, we're getting a little bit of antioxidant information in there with the Oxidized Ldl, a full thyroid profile in there. Down at the bottom, draw your eyes to getting our levels of hemoglobin A1c. Of course, this is important. We know if it goes above a 5.2, it increases the risk of our brain shrinking. We know that if it goes above a 5.6, we're now looking at prediabetes. Magnesium is on here, insulin-like growth factor. So when insulin-like growth factor is low, this can explain fatigue in patients when you're unable to find it for other reasons. Also, if we see it too high, we want to think about that in terms of risk factor for cancer. Looking at that reverse T3 that we make under more stress, and you are still in the same profile. So now, with your yearly screen, your chem screen, your CBC, now you've ruled out that there's not liver failure. Now you've ruled out that there's not kidney failure. And now we're thinking more functionally. Our oxidized LDL is our first line to tell us about oxidative stress. But here we see you also get markers like F2 isoprostane, as well as 8-OHDG. These both go up when there's more oxidative stress. This one a bit more related to cardiovascular disease and things neurologic. This goes up when there's more DNA damage. How many times have our patients come in and said, well, I went in, I did my wellness screen, what on there tells me if I'm at risk of cancer? And the answer is not so much. 8-OHDG tells us when there's more DNA damage. And so this is correlated with an increased risk of cancer. It also goes up when the mitochondria is failing to work as well. So in terms of looking at a complete wellness profile, yes, we can rule out liver failure, kidney failure, organ dysfunction. But what we also want to know is how well is our patient, and our oxidative stress markers will tell us that. Included is both a percent reduced as well as total glutathione. So right now what we're learning is this overproduction of cytokines, whether or not we're talking chronic disease like Lyme disease or mold, or something acute like COVID, happens when you're glutathione deficient. This is something that we should be keeping an eye on in everyone. It's our most potent intracellular antioxidant. Understanding levels can be quite useful. Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer. So we should be looking at this routinely in our patients, covering things like cholesterol, triglycerides, HDL, low density lipids, C-reactive protein, one of our major markers for inflammation. We know that people who have higher levels of CRP, they're likely, if they get COVID, to have a worse effect from that. But we also know that this is a player in chronic conditions. In fact, at levels of high normal, or 2.8, 2.9, this is more predictive for inflammation and irritable bowel disease than is calprotectin. So all of this combined on the same profile. In addition, getting your levels of insulin, fibrinogen. We know people that have higher levels of fibrinogen have worse outcomes in COVID, a clotting marker, so we can tell us about chronic disease as well. SED rate. Also getting a snapshot of people's hormones, looking at what the brain's telling reproductive organs to do, like LH and FSH. Looking at the levels of hormones, progesterone, estradiol, estriol. A difference on the male hormone profile or the male wellness profile is that it will also have dihydroxytestosterone on there. Homocysteine goes up when we are having difficulty with methylation, which can relate to cardiovascular disease, neurologic conditions as well. These nice reports that give you some insight and let your patient see exactly how extreme things might be, but really covering the bases. When people come to us for a wellness workup, yes, we want to make sure that there's the absence of organ failure, but we also want to do good preventative medicine. And by looking at these markers that combine some of the best markers for monitoring levels of oxidative stress, we can truly gauge risk of cardiovascular disease, neurologic areas, problems with detoxification, and this can set the foundation for even a larger functional medicine workup. The wellness profile is an excellent tool from Precision Point. We are giving it to you at a promotional rate this month. Thanks so much for reviewing it with me.